It was in the season of the Red Moon, when all trade routes aligned across the galaxy, that fate saw fit to cast Jake Vance, an ordinary space courier by all outward appearances, into the forbidden world of Velyria. He had navigated treacherous warplanes before, flying rusted freighters through the auroras of Lagos and skimming too close to solar flares near the star of Taranthia. But nothing in his 20-odd years of piloting had prepared him for the labyrinthine anomalies swirling around Valyria's dark orbit. Even distant starlight seemed to recoil from that planet's presence. To approach it, let alone descend through its atmosphere, was an act of folly or desperation, or both. Yet desperation was precisely what guided him now. He had accepted a simple courier job, smuggling raw crystal cores for a petty crime lord named Hestus Quinn, the kind of contract no respectable pilot would touch. But bills demanded to be paid, and the lure of quick credits proved irresistible. A single miscalculation, an unexpected solar spike from the region's dying star, and Jake's battered craft spun out of control. Alarms blared in the cockpit, sparks flew from flickering consoles, and hull integrity slipped from precarious to dire. Jake wrestled with the joystick, cursing all the while, until he realized his only hope lay in an emergency landing on the nearest planet, Velyria. The moment he breached the planet's roiling cloud cover, the instruments went mad, responding to strange magnetic fields that danced across the surface like ghostly ribbons. The autopilot was useless, and manual controls twisted under invisible forces. Jake's jaw clenched with grim determination. He fought the ship's yaw, guiding it as best he could between jagged mountains of obsidian, ridges carved by eons of storms, and valleys pulsing with bioluminescent flora. When at last he found a clearing that looked somewhat level, he braced for impact, engines screaming in protest. Metal ground against rock, the ship's frame trembling beneath the strain. Then came the final crash, an impact that sent him hurtling against his harness and shattered what remained of the craft's landing gear. For several moments, he simply sat there in stunned silence, lungs heaving, sweat dripping from his brow. A hush enveloped the cockpit. Warning lights still flickered, but the engines had fallen silent. He tested his limbs to ensure nothing was broken, then forced the cockpit door open with a grunt. A hiss of pressurized air greeted him as he climbed out into a new and alien world. The skies above were blood-tinged, dominated by twin moons that peered down like baleful eyes. A gust of bitter wind buffeted him, carrying with it the faint tang of some unidentifiable mineral. He whispered a half-hearted prayer to whatever cosmic deity might be listening, and then set about salvaging what gear he could. Jake had just finished prying loose a pack of emergency supplies when he noticed a swirling glow in the distance. At first, it looked like a spiral of dust illuminated by the eerie moonlight. Then he realized it was not merely dust, it was a column of luminous motes, drifting upward from what appeared to be a ruined courtyard. Instinct warned him to stay away, but curiosity tugged at him even harder. If there were people here, or, at the very least, some form of sentient life, perhaps they could help him repair his vessel. Perhaps they would simply kill him on sight. The unspoken possibility sent a chill down his spine. Still, stranded on a forbidden world, he had precious few options. So he ventured forth, carefully picking his way across basalt slabs and vine-entangled columns that hinted at a once great civilization. The architecture was elegant in its decay, with soaring arches and carvings of unfamiliar constellations. Columns rose in graceful spirals, crowned by strange metallic spires that crackled with faint arcs of energy. Shadows seemed to dance upon the walls, drawn into the swirling glow at the courtyard center. And in that courtyard, Jake found a gathering, a council of robed figures standing in a circle, their garments shimmering under that unearthly light. At the very heart of the circle was a raised platform, carved from obsidian and etched with runes that pulsed a dark violet. Kneeling on the platform, shackled by chains that radiated power, was a woman, her skin a deep, vibrant hue of violet, her eyes reflecting both defiance and despair. Her long hair shimmered in the shifting glow, and an ornate crest upon her forehead marked her as one of high status. She was barely conscious, head lolling to one side, and each breath seemed labored, as though she fought some tremendous force from within. Jake crouched behind a fallen column, heart pounding. Whatever ritual was taking place, it radiated a sense of foreboding so profound he could taste it, bitter and cold, on the back of his tongue. The robed figures chanted in low, throaty voices, forming words that seemed to slip between languages, ancient and primal. Small orbs of light danced around them, rising from channels carved into the ground and ascending toward the star-laden sky. By the light of the Anaris, one of the figures intoned, voice echoing across the courtyard, "We offer this vessel, that the old cycle may be renewed." Jake felt his pulse quicken. The phrase, "offer this vessel," implied sacrifice. Was she to be killed? Or consumed by some cosmic entity? He remembered the rumors about Velyria, hushed whispers of a world cut off from the rest of the galaxy, because of the Anaris High Council, keepers of arcane knowledge that predated the union of star systems. Supposedly, they harnessed cosmic energies that mortal minds were never meant to wield. He glanced at the woman again, wondering if he dared intervene. Common sense told him to run back to the wreckage, to hide until he found a way off this accursed rock. But something about her half-lidded gaze, the near plea in her eyes, refused to let him turn away. The chanting rose in pitch, culminating in a single, sharp word of power. The robed figures lifted their arms, and the swirling motes of light converged upon the woman's prone form. She screamed, an agonized sound that ripped through the night. The light began to burrow into her skin, arcs of luminous energy dancing across her shackles. She convulsed, her eyes rolling back. The runes etched in obsidian flared with an intense brightness. Without thinking, Jake leapt out from behind the column, heart thundering in his chest. He sprinted toward the platform, ignoring the startled cries of the robed figures. One of them raised a hand, perhaps to cast some hex or telekinetic barrier, but Jake's momentum was too great. He slid onto the platform, seizing the hilt of a broken staff lying abandoned. In a desperate move, he swung it at the chain that bound the woman's wrists to the stone. A thunderous crack of energy erupted, sending sparks flying. The chain fractured, releasing a surge of blinding light. The ritual, abruptly broken, collapsed into chaotic confusion. The robed figures shouted in alarm, the swirling column of light wavering and distorting. Jake shielded his eyes, expecting to be incinerated. Instead, the luminous motes ricocheted wildly, drawn into both him and the captive woman. A profound shockwave spread outward, toppling the chanting council members and shattering the courtyard's runic carvings. When the light cleared, Jake found himself kneeling beside the woman, both of them engulfed in a strange, shimmering aura that flickered in time with their heartbeats. She slowly lifted her head, eyes searching his face in bewilderment. For a moment, they stared at each other, both trembling from the raw power they had just unleashed. Then, the robed figures recovered, hatred gleaming in their eyes. More of them poured into the courtyard, a flood of black and gold robes under the somber twin moons. Jake grimaced, quickly helping the woman to her feet. She could barely stand, and her breath came in ragged gasps, yet she managed to summon surprising resolve. With one arm slung over his shoulder, she staggered alongside him as they fled from the courtyard, the acrid scent of ozone trailing in their wake. Their flight through the ruins was a delirium of narrow escapes, with chanting pursuers close on their heels. Jake had no clear path in mind. He simply followed the faint sense of direction that came from some inexplicable bond to the woman. Each time they rounded a corner, the robed figures appeared, chanting incantations that caused the very stone to shift, seeking to trap them. Yet every time, the woman, whom Jake would soon learn was named Liora, raised a trembling hand, and a radiant pulse of energy blasted the barriers aside. At last, they emerged from the maze of fallen columns, stumbling into a forest of colossal, bioluminescent trees with trunks so thick that entire dwellings could have been carved within. Panting, battered, and lathered in sweat, Jake carefully lowered Liora against one of the trunks. He could still hear the distant cries of the pursuers, though muffled by the dense foliage. You fool," Liora rasped, her eyes fluttering shut. "Do you realize what you have done?" Jake tried to catch his breath, pressing a hand to his throbbing ribs. "Saved your life, I think," he managed, though the entire truth was far more complicated. She shook her head in weary disbelief, violet lips parted in a wry grimace. "The cycle is broken. The energies that bind our world, they are now bound to us. Her gaze met his, and despite her exhaustion, a strange luminosity shone in her eyes, as though a star had taken root there. We must flee, or the High Council will have both our heads. And worse. Jake swallowed, recalling the raw power that had coursed through them. I'm Jake, he said, still somewhat dazed. And I'm sorry. Liora let out a bitter laugh, which quickly turned into a cough. I am Liora of the royal line, chosen to be a vessel for the cosmic entity Anaris. Or so they claimed. And you, Jake of unknown lineage, have meddled in a ceremony older than your civilization, older than the stone beneath our feet. She paused, eyes distant. We need to move. They will not rest until we are found. There was little time for further explanation. Jake hoisted her up, and the two of them pressed on into the depths of the glowing forest, every step accompanied by the flickering resonance of power now shared between them. Velyria itself seemed alive with hidden forces, as though the planet watched them with keen interest. Ancient runes on half-buried obelisks glowed in response to their proximity, and tree-like plants bent their luminescent branches toward them. Jake's mind swam with questions, but for the moment, he focused on survival. As the night wore on, they traversed winding paths and precarious rock bridges over steaming ravines. Strange creatures slithered at the edges of their vision, eyes gleaming with curiosity or hunger. Liora's condition worsened, and Jake feared she might collapse. He had to find shelter, somewhere to hide, regroup, and figure out the next step. At last, they stumbled upon a small cave entrance concealed by thick vines. Inside, the air was cool, though faintly tinged with sulfur from distant geysers. Jake guided Liora to a flat stone, helped her sit, and then rummaged through his emergency pack, producing a small canister of medicinal foam. She eyed it warily. Human technology? She asked, voice hushed. Jake nodded. It's all I've got. It can dull the pain. He applied the foam to a gash on her arm, watching as it bubbled and sealed the wound. She winced, but didn't protest further. A subdued glow traced up her veins, a byproduct of the cosmic energy that now resided within her. He noticed it, felt it pulsing in his own bloodstream as well, though fainter, as though her body bore the brunt of this new power. When she had rested enough to speak more steadily, Liora shared her story in a halting whisper. Velyria, once a thriving nexus of culture and arcane knowledge, had become a prison for its inhabitants after the Anaris High Council declared the planet sacred ground. Through countless generations, a single chosen vessel would merge with a cosmic force, an aspect of the Anaris entity, to maintain an ancient equilibrium. This was the root of Velyria's forbidden status, and any outsiders were either turned away or captured. Liora, as a noble descendant of the first vessel, had no choice. The council demanded her sacrifice. Jake listened in grim silence. He had no love for mystical ceremonies or cosmic bargains, but he sensed Liora's sorrow and the heavy weight of expectations forced upon her. So your life was meant to be forfeit, he said softly. And now, I've ruined their ritual? She nodded, hugging her knees. Yes, and in so doing, you have inadvertently bonded yourself to the cosmic essence. We share it now, an unstable bond, and the council will stop at nothing to correct their mistake. Her eyes flitted to the mouth of the cave. They will come for us, and they will bring the full force of the ancient order to bear. Jake exhaled a long breath, trying to quell the dread creeping up his spine. He knew they had to leave Velyria, but his crashed ship was barely more than scrap at this point. And even if he could fix it, would the council allow him to simply fly away with Liora? We'll need help, he said quietly. Someone who knows how to fix my ship, or at least guide us to a safer place. Liora regarded him thoughtfully. There is one who might help. A smuggler named Halker. He operates on the fringes, always looking for an opportunity to profit. He hates the council, and rumor says he has ways of coming and going from Velyria undetected. But he is not trustworthy. Jake allowed himself a humorless chuckle. Seems like our best bet right now. Where do we find this Halker? In the city of Arelis, beyond the black spires. She closed her eyes. But getting there will not be easy. The land is fraught with wards and illusions cast by the council's enforcers. Jake patted her shoulder. We'll find a way. In the dim hush of the cave, with the pulse of cosmic energy thrumming between them, Jake and Liora formed a fragile alliance. He, a desperate pilot with no place to go, and she, a once sacred offering now caught between mortality and divinity. The next day, they set out, each step a new gamble against a land twisted by ancient powers. Their journey became a series of trials under the planet's crimson sun, over basalt plains that shimmered with heat, through labyrinthine canyons where illusions toyed with their senses. They pressed on. Liora's presence, once regal, now radiated a quiet determination that Jake found both inspiring and heartbreaking. She spoke of her time in the royal courts, of how the council had raised her to be pious, obedient, and ready to serve the cosmic will. Yet behind those memories, Jake sensed a fierce yearning for freedom, something she had never dared to imagine until now. All the while, Jake struggled with the strange fluctuations inside him. The cosmic energy, once stable in Liora's bloodline, now wavered unpredictably. Sometimes, it manifested in fleeting visions, snatches of astral realms he could not name, or bursts of telekinetic force that knocked him off his feet if he didn't concentrate. Other times, it brought him to the brink of collapse, as though some part of his soul was missing and he was grasping at illusions. Liora tried to guide him, sharing half-remembered techniques for channeling the energy, but even she was learning anew. Their bond was unstable, an accidental union that defied centuries of controlled ritual. In the barren expanse between mountains, they encountered the council's constructs, hollowed-out shells of ancient guardians, once made of living stone, now animated by black magic. Tall as a shuttle, each one lumbered across the scorched earth, searching for any sign of intruders. With measured care, Jake and Liora skirted around them, hiding behind rock outcroppings and creeping through gullies. Once, one of the constructs caught sight of them, unleashing a spear of crackling purple energy from its carved arm. Liora retaliated with a desperate blast of cosmic power that shattered the Guardian into shards of smoldering stone, leaving them both shaken by the force of the clash. Day by day, they made their way toward Aurelis, sleeping under star-filled skies that gleamed in swirling patterns unknown to any chart Jake had ever studied. The same stars that had once guided him across the cosmos now felt like watchful eyes. He pondered the cosmic entity named Anaris, wondering if it was truly divine or merely another powerful alien intelligence. Whatever the truth, it seemed to loom over everything, a silent presence woven through the fabric of Velyria. Sometimes, Liora awoke in the night, face contorted in fear, muttering about voices echoing through her mind. Jake could offer only clumsy reassurance, though inwardly he, too, sensed distant whispers tugging at his consciousness. At last, they reached the outskirts of Aurelis, a city of shimmering towers and hidden alcoves carved into a natural crescent of basalt cliffs. The city glowed with multicolored crystals, each tower reminiscent of a giant stalagmite, reaching skyward with graceful arcs. Ancient monorails and suspended bridges interconnected the structures, many of which were partially overgrown by bioluminescent vines. The general populace thronged the winding streets, going about their lives under the watchful presence of robed officials who patrolled with stern glares and staff weapons glowing faintly. Aurelis was no mere backwater settlement. Once, it had been the heart of trade and culture on Velyria, back when off-world vessels could freely land. Now, it was a palimpsest of old grandeur, overshadowed by the ever-increasing control of the Anaris High Council. Jake observed the city from a vantage point atop a cliffside path, noting the heavy presence of council enforcers. They would not slip by unnoticed for long. Liora guided him through winding back alleys, using hoods and borrowed cloaks to conceal their faces. The cosmic energies within them flickered, reacting with the wards placed around official buildings. More than once, they had to duck behind crates to avoid detection as patrols marched past. The faces of the citizens were worn with quiet resignation, as though they sensed a growing darkness that no one dared name. The air thrummed with suppressed tension, and overhead, the red sun cast shadows that felt unsettlingly alive. Following a maze of cramped passageways, they reached a hidden entrance to the lower levels, where contraband and criminals thrived. An old sign, half broken, led them to a rusty door beneath a broken arch of neon lights that once spelled out a tavern name. Beyond that door, the corridors descended into a network of repurposed tunnels. Flickering glow lamps illuminated faces etched with desperation. Drifters, thieves, and black market merchants who lived in these depths, safe from the prying eyes of the council. They found Halker in a smoky den that passed for a lounge, sprawled across a plush seat with a half-empty glass of fluorescent liquor in his hand. He was a wiry man of uncertain age, with an angular face and a cunning gleam in his eyes. His hair was braided with metallic threads that faintly glowed, and a scar traced the line of his jaw. At first glance, Jake pegged him as a scoundrel who prided himself on secrets and subterfuge, a man who trusted nothing save his own greed. "Well, if it isn't my lady Liora, come back from the brink of oblivion," Halker drawled, not bothering to stand. His gaze shifted to Jake, curiosity evident. "And you've brought a human. A bold choice, given the council's decree that no outsiders roam free. Still, I've heard rumors of a certain crashed pilot stirring trouble in the old ruins. Seems you two are a hot topic these days." Liora's posture was tense as she approached him. "We need passage off-world, Halker. And we need it soon." Halker tilted his head with feigned sympathy. "Off-world? Velyria is locked down tighter than an imperial treasury. But I do have ways." He swirled the liquor in his glass, eyes never leaving Liora. "And your friend here? I assume he's the reason the High Council is in a frenzy, shrieking about a broken ritual. That means there's a price on your heads." Jake bit back a retort. He needed to let Liora handle this negotiation. She knew the local terrain far better. Liora leaned in, lowering her voice. "Name your price. Whatever it is, we can pay." "Oh, and how exactly do you plan to pay?" Halker's grin widened. "Your family's assets are all but forfeit, last I heard. The council seized them after your disappearance." For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Liora's face. Jake felt a pang of alarm. They truly had nothing of material value to barter, aside from the cosmic energy swirling in their veins. But that power, intangible and dangerous, was not something to be sold. Or was it? Jake immediately dismissed the thought, though he caught the calculating look in Halker's eyes, suggesting the smuggler had already considered it. Before anyone could speak again, a tremor reverberated through the tunnels, accompanied by a surge of sparks from overhead lamps. Shouts erupted from the lounge entrance. Jake and Liora spun around to see robed enforcers flooding into the room, staffs crackling with violet energy. The High Council had found them. Chaos ensued. Halker leapt to his feet with an oath, barking orders at his guards to hold off the enforcers. Blasts of arcane power scorched the walls, and a swirling fight broke out among the patrons, many of whom were armed with illegal blasters. Jake grabbed Liora's hand, ducking as a bolt of purple light sizzled past. They dove behind an overturned table, hearts hammering. Halker cursed, tearing a hidden pulse pistol from his coat. "For the right price, I'll cover your escape," he called out over the din. It was hardly a comforting notion, but they had little choice. Jake risked a glance around the table. The enforcers pressed forward with grim determination. He locked eyes with Liora, nodding. She summoned what strength she could, channeling the cosmic force to raise a shimmering barrier of light. The enforcer's blasts collided with it, scattering harmlessly for the moment. Jake grabbed his own small sidearm, a battered plasma pistol, and fired at the enforcer's feet, kicking up debris. Halker motioned toward a back exit, then lobbed a plasma grenade at the enforcers. It detonated with a thunderous roar, buying them precious seconds. Together, they darted through the haze of smoke and sparks, emerging into a smaller corridor that snaked deeper into the underground. More enforcers were bound to be around, so they ran, Halker leading the way. "I've got a ship," he muttered between labored breaths. "Out beyond the city limits, cloaked under a specialized field. But I need a console key for my safe house first." Jake's mind whirled. "Then let's get it." Liora grimaced, pressing a hand to her chest. The cosmic energy flickered wildly around her, an unstable swirl threatening to overwhelm her if she pushed too hard. "We must hurry. I cannot keep them at bay forever." They wove through cramped passageways, turning corner after corner until they reached a cramped room lit by a single, flickering panel. Halker rushed to a hidden compartment, punched in a code, and retrieved a small data crystal. He flashed a triumphant grin. "Now let's get out of." But before he could finish, a shadowy figure materialized at the threshold. Garbed in dark robes, face shrouded by an ornate helm, This individual radiated an aura of power far surpassing the lesser enforcers. A staff carved from an obsidian-like material crackled in the figure's hand. With a swift motion, the intruder sent Halker crashing against the wall with a wave of telekinetic force. Jake fired his plasma pistol in desperation, but the blasts were deflected effortlessly. Liora struggled to stand, arms trembling as she attempted to invoke the cosmic energy. The robed figure spoke, voice echoing with layered tones, as though multiple beings spoke at once. "You have meddled in the holy cycle," the figure intoned, advancing with slow, deliberate steps. "Surrender the vessel, and perhaps the punishment will be merciful." Jake's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor behind them was blocked by rubble. They stood cornered, with Halker dazed on the floor. Summoning courage, Jake braced himself. "We're not surrendering," he growled. The figure's staff flared, launching tendrils of violet lightning. Jake cried out as electricity coursed through him, dropping to his knees. Liora, summoning a final reserve of strength, cast a brilliant surge of cosmic light that countered the lightning. Sparks and arcs warred in midair, forming a scintillating display that threatened to tear the cramped room apart. Jake felt heat radiate from the clash of energies, saw cracks form along the walls. But Liora was too weak from their grueling journey. The robed figure's power pressed forward. Inch by inch, Liora's cosmic barrier faltered. Jake, still reeling, tried to raise his pistol, only to have it ripped from his hand by a telekinetic jolt. He and Liora exchanged one last, desperate look, the unspoken question blazing in their eyes. Were they about to die here, so close to an escape they could almost taste? A sudden roar rang out. Halker, regaining consciousness, hurled a canister of some volatile compound at the robed figure's feet. It detonated in a burst of acrid smoke and bright sparks, momentarily staggering their foe. In that brief opening, Liora unleashed a final, concentrated beam of cosmic energy. It smashed into the figure, who howled in rage as the swirling forces collided. The helm cracked, revealing pale features twisted with fury. Before the figure could retaliate, Halker seized Jake and Liora, dragging them through a side hatch that led into a maintenance tunnel. They ran, half-blind, choking on the smoke and ignoring the violent tremors behind them. "This way," Halker hissed, more frantic than they had ever seen him. They emerged at last onto a deserted street near the edge of the city, where a battered hovercraft awaited. Halker climbed into the pilot's seat, engine already humming with readiness. Jake and Liora collapsed into the back, panting. The moment they were aboard, Halker gunned the throttle. The craft lurched forward, speeding away from Aurelis and into the wilds beyond. Once they were clear of the city, Halker navigated swiftly toward the rocky outlands, where the sky darkened once more under the planet's twin moons. The only sound for a time was the rush of wind and the hum of the hovercraft's engines. Halker's hidden ship was sheltered in a canyon, cloaked by a flickering field of shimmering distortions. It resembled a blockade runner, smaller than a typical freighter, but clearly equipped with advanced stealth technology. He powered down the hovercraft and turned to face Jake and Liora in the cramped cabin. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon like a lamenting spirit. "That was closer than I'd like," Halker muttered, tapping the data crystal he had retrieved. "But we made it. The Council won't stop hunting, though, so we need to leave now." Jake nodded wearily. "If your ship can get us off this planet, I'll handle the rest." Halker shot him a knowing look. "You don't understand the magnitude of what you've unleashed, do you? The Council fears you because you disrupted a ritual fundamental to their power. They'll track you across star systems. And they have allies beyond Velyria." Liora looked up, eyes shining in the moonlight. "Then we will face them. But first, I need to be free. Truly free. And that can only happen if I leave this cursed world. The cosmic essence within me, within us, must be stabilized." Jake nodded, though he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "Let's get off Velyria first. Then we can decide how to handle all of this." With Halker's help, they boarded the blockade runner. The interior was cramped, corridors lined with crates of contraband, but the cockpit was surprisingly sophisticated. Halker slid into the pilot's seat, tapping controls to awaken the ship's systems. A subdued glow illuminated readouts and screens. Jake took the co-pilot's seat, glancing at the battered modules. It might not be pretty, but it was a chance. Liora strapped herself in behind them, eyes fixed on the starry sky visible through the ship's forward viewport. They powered up, the engines humming with a resonant bass. Outside, swirling dust kicked up in plumes. Just as they began to lift off, a thunderous impact rattled the entire canyon. Illuminated by the floodlights, a squadron of council enforcers lined the canyon rim, unleashing bolts of purple energy. The blockade runners' shields flared under the assault, and Halker cursed. "They're already here," he snarled. "Brace yourselves. I'll do what I can." Jake's stomach twisted as the ship lurched higher, weaving to avoid the barrage. Halker slammed the thrusters to full, and the vessel rocketed upward. Streams of violet lightning lashed at them, searing bright lines across the canopy. Rocks tumbled down the canyon walls, shaken loose by the explosive impacts. With a roar, the ship cleared the rim, soared over the desert expanse, and pointed its nose skyward, aiming for the swirling clouds overhead. Just as they pierced the planet's atmosphere, a final blast struck them, jolting the entire craft. Warning klaxons blared, lights flickering. Halker cursed and fought the controls as the ship wobbled precariously. Then, at last, they broke free into the silence of space, leaving the gravitational pull of Velyria behind. Jake felt a rush of relief, though his heart still pounded. Halker quickly adjusted the ship's course, flipping switches to engage the stealth field. "We need to jump to FTL," he said, voice tight. "But the hyperdrives are old. I can't guarantee how stable they'll be with all this damage." Jake nodded, running a quick systems check on a flickering panel. "Do what you have to. Let's just put distance between us and Velyria." He cast a look over his shoulder at Liora, who watched the planet's diminishing sphere through a small porthole. A faint sense of longing and sadness emanated from her, as though she were leaving behind not just a place but a destiny. The blockade runners' engines whined, and then, in a lurching distortion of space, they jumped to faster-than-light travel. Stars elongated into streaming lines, and the planet receded into memory. Jake exhaled, leaning back in his seat, adrenaline still coursing through him. They were free of Velyria's gravity, but not free of the threat. Liora's presence glowed in the cramped cabin, as though the cosmic essence within her defied the boundaries of hull and bulkhead. Jake could sense it, like a second heartbeat pulsing in his chest, bound to hers. What would it mean for them, now that they had escaped the Council's grasp? The question loomed large, and no one had an easy answer. In the days that followed, they huddled together on the blockade runner, charting a course through hidden warp lanes and remote star systems to avoid pursuit. Halker, though sly and self-serving, proved resourceful, utilizing smugglers' beacons and safe harbors to keep them one step ahead of the Council's far-reaching influence. Meanwhile, Jake and Liora confronted the reality of their shared bond, experimenting cautiously with the cosmic power that crackled in their veins. Jake noticed how his reflexes improved, how he seemed to glimpse brief flashes of potential futures, though not clearly enough to shape them. He also suffered periodic surges of pain, an echo of Liora's struggles, as if their nervous systems were tangling. Liora explained that in the rightful ceremony, the essence would have been channeled solely into a single vessel. Now, it was split between them, an unorthodox arrangement that could either grant them incredible strength or destroy them from the inside out. But they were not without allies. Through back channels, Halker arranged a clandestine meeting with an eccentric mystic named Rattan Fell, who roamed the edges of known space. Rattan was rumored to possess knowledge of forbidden lore, including ways to manipulate or sever cosmic bonds. If there was a solution, Rattan might have it. They rendezvoused at a drifting station known as the Pale Market, a floating bazaar built from repurposed asteroids. Vendors hawked exotic wares in half-sealed corridors, while gamblers clashed in neon-lit arenas. Jake had never seen a place so lawless, yet so strangely vibrant. The din of commerce echoed from every corner. In a cramped alcove near the market center, they met Rattan Fell, a small, wiry individual whose skin was covered in cryptic tattoos. Gossamer robes draped over a frame that seemed too frail to contain a beating heart. Yet behind Rattan's piercing gray eyes lay an ageless intelligence, one that made Jake shiver at the prospect of what this mystic had witnessed. When they explained their plight, Rattan listened in calm silence, fingertips tracing the swirling patterns etched on the table. At length, Rattan spoke. The cosmic essence of Anaris is not to be taken lightly. For centuries, the High Council carefully orchestrated its transfer to preserve their hold on Velyria. You, dear Liora, were to become the next link in that chain. And you, Jake, represent the unforeseen disruption, an element they could not predict. Now the bond is incomplete, existing in both of you, and it is likely unstable. Jake nodded. Is there a way to break the bond? Or stabilize it, so the council can't use us? Rattan pursed thin lips. There are ways, but each exacts a price. You might restore the cycle, returning the essence to Velyria and allowing Anaris to merge fully with its chosen vessel. That would likely spare you, Jake, though at the cost of Liora's freedom. Or you could embrace the power, unify it within yourselves, and attempt to control it. Though such a path might unravel your minds if you fail. Liora's eyes widened, flickering with that faint cosmic glow. And the third option? A ghost of a smile crossed the mystic's face. Destroy it, of course. Attempt to expunge the cosmic essence from your bodies and cast it adrift, severing Anaris's link to the mortal realm. But doing so risks unimaginable backlash, not just for you, but for Velyria, which has long been shaped by that power. Silence reigned in the small alcove. Jake's mind raced through the possibilities. Return the essence and save themselves at Liora's expense? That was unthinkable. Embrace the power and risk total madness? Also daunting. Destroy it and gamble with the fate of an entire planet? The moral burden of that choice weighed heavily. Halker cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Whatever you decide, do it quickly. Word is the council has dispatched hunters throughout this sector. They'll be closing in before long. Rattan nodded. Indeed. Perhaps there is a hidden path, one that defies the council's ancient mandates. But forging it would require a synergy between you two, a unity of purpose beyond simple cooperation. Jake took Liora's hand, feeling the subtle electric tingle of their bond. She turned to him, expression solemn. Whatever happens, we face it together. Her words kindled something in Jake's chest, an odd sense of belonging that had eluded him all his life. He squeezed her hand in return. We'll decide soon, and we'll do what's right, for both of us and for Velyria. Rattan fell and inclined their head. Then I suggest you stay hidden here for a short time and make peace with your choice. I can offer guidance, though I cannot walk the path for you. That night, or what passed for night in the pale market's perpetual twilight, Jake and Liora sequestered themselves in a small cargo hold aboard Halker's blockade runner. Sitting cross-legged on the cold deck, they focused on their link, exploring the interplay of cosmic energy that surged through them. Liora murmured fragments of the old incantations she had learned in secret, trying to shape the erratic pulses into a coherent rhythm. Jake, eyes closed, let himself drift in the ebb and flow of this shared power, though fear gnawed at him. In that state, images danced across their minds. Velyria in ages past, alive with shimmering towers under a radiant star. The first vessel of Anaris, a regal figure crowned with starlight, forging a pact to protect the planet. Over centuries, the cycle had grown twisted, exploited by those who wielded it. The Council, once protectors, had become jailers, binding the planet's fate to their dogma. And now Liora stood at the crossroads, burdened by a legacy not of her choosing. Jake saw glimpses of possible futures, one where they forcibly returned to Velyria, compelled to finish the ritual. Another where they roamed the stars as fugitives, barely controlling the power within. And yet another, a cataclysmic flash, where they hurled the essence out into the void, leaving Velyria bereft of the energy that had defined it for millennia, uncertain whether it might wither or be reborn. When they emerged from this meditative state, both were trembling. Liora's voice was soft. I cannot ask the planet to bear the cost of our freedom, nor can I surrender myself to that wretched cycle. But perhaps we can create a new cycle, one that does not demand sacrifice. Jake nodded, though uncertainty still loomed. If there's a way to share the power willingly, to become something new, without letting the council enslave you, that might be our path. They decided to speak again with Rattan Fell, who listened to their intentions with curiosity. The mystics stroked their tattoos thoughtfully. A new cycle, forged by two bonded souls who refused to submit or destroy. Intriguing. I have heard of such heresy whispered in the darkest corners of arcane libraries. If you are determined, I can help you attempt this transformation. But be warned, it will place you both in mortal danger, and the council will sense it. They will strike with all their might. Jake exchanged a glance with Liora, heart pounding. We're ready. They traveled to a remote section of the Pale Market, an abandoned docking bay exposed to the stars. Rattan led them in a ritual circle of glowing glyphs drawn with luminescent dust. The blockade runner was parked nearby, engines idling, guarded by Halker and a handful of mercenaries. Everyone braced for an imminent attack, for if the council possessed any clairvoyance, they would come swiftly. As Rattan chanted in a language older than any empire, Jake and Liora stood in the center of the glyphs. Their cosmic bond flared like a living flame, swirling around them in visible arcs. Through half-lidded eyes, Jake saw constellations unravel, replaced by patterns that pulsed with the same rhythm as Leora's heartbeat. His mind spun as if submerged in a cosmic ocean. She, in turn, felt his presence as a stabilizing anchor, a thread of genuine care that had somehow flourished amid chaos. Rattan's voice rose, echoing off the hulls of derelict ships. By the unbound cosmos, we reject the chains of the old cycle. We forge anew, with free will as our cornerstone. We call upon the essence, heed our oath. Suddenly, a horrid screech split the station's silence. From the docking bay's entrance surged a cadre of council enforcers, led by the same obsidian staff figure who had nearly bested them in Aurelius. Their eyes burned with righteous fury. Bolts of violet lightning crackled across the bay, striking pillars and sending molten debris flying. Halker and his mercenaries opened fire, returning the enforcers' blasts with scattershot pulses. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Rattan continued chanting, undeterred, though sweat beaded on the mystic's brow. The glyphs under Jake and Leora's feet shifted in hue, from emerald to a brilliant gold. A spiral of cosmic energy enveloped them, roaring like a solar flare. Jake felt power surge through him, so intense it blinded him. He heard Liora cry out, felt her fingers grip his arm in a desperate plea. He squeezed back, anchoring them both. The swirling essence coalesced, forming an orb of molten radiance that hovered between them. This was the cosmic core of Anaris, raw and unbound. If they could shape it together, perhaps they could stabilize their link into a new, more benevolent cycle. The council's leader, staff raised, hurled a barrage of dark energy toward the orb, shrieking, "You will not defile the sacred essence." The blast slammed into the swirling field, destabilizing it. Jake and Liora reeled, struggling to maintain their focus. A jolt of fear lanced through Jake's heart. If that dark energy contaminated their forging, it could twist the essence into something monstrous or kill them outright. Desperate, he concentrated on his bond with Liora, recalling the moments they had shared, the courage in her eyes as she fought for freedom, the gentle sadness in her voice when she spoke of her lost future, the spark of something deeper that had grown between them, fueled by shared hardship. Liora sensed his feelings, echoing them back with an intensity that made his heart ache. They poured those emotions into the swirling orb, willing it to reflect hope, choice, and compassion rather than tyranny. A brilliant flare erupted, drowning out the docking bay in pure white light. Jake felt a sudden, blissful release, as though he soared beyond physical confines. He sensed Liora beside him, merging with him in that luminous space, both distinct and yet entwined. The orb pulsed, absorbing the council's dark energy without letting it corrupt the forging. When the glare subsided, Jake found himself kneeling on the docking bay floor, panting for breath. Liora was beside him, eyes glowing with a gentle radiance. Rattan stood off to the side, face etched with awe and exhaustion. All around them, enforcers lay sprawled, their powers nullified by the cosmic surge. The obsidian staff leader was nowhere to be seen, perhaps consumed in the final clash or vanished in retreat. Halker and the mercenaries approached cautiously. The docking bay crackled with residual energy, debris scattered everywhere. Yet, despite the destruction, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of calm. The cosmic power within him no longer surged unpredictably. Instead, it flowed in a steady current, balanced between him and Liora. For her part, Liora's expression was one of gentle wonder. Raton nodded slowly. You have done the impossible. A new cycle has been forged, no longer demanding a singular vessel. The essence is shared freely between you both, and the Council's ancient hold on it is broken. Jake helped Liora to her feet, steadying her. Then we're free. A tired but genuine smile touched Raton's lips. As free as mortals can be. The Council may still pursue you, but their greatest weapon, the unwavering claim over Anaris's essence, has been lost. Halker scratched his head, grinning wryly. Does that mean we get to celebrate now? Because I'm all for getting paid, but seeing that explosion of cosmic might up close was enough to rattle my nerves for a lifetime. Liora turned to Jake, eyes shining. We can chart our own path now. My world may be free to evolve, or it may resist the change. But it's no longer shackled by that cruel necessity. Jake pulled her into an embrace, guided by an impulse that felt both tender and triumphant. Wherever that path leads, I'm with you. Amid the wreckage of the docking bay, with star lanes stretching before them, their journey reached a turning point. Yes, the Council still lurked in dark corners of the galaxy, and the ramifications of a broken ritual would ripple outward for years to come. But Jake Vance, a once struggling pilot, and Liora, a noble once resigned to sacrifice, had forged something new, a living testament to the power of choice. They chose to remain together, traveling aboard Halker's refurbished ship. Its name soon changed from the unremarkable Sable Drifter to the more hopeful Nova's Dawn. At each port they visited, they heard rumors of the Anaris High Council losing influence, of internal schisms among its faithful. Some whispered that Velyria's skies had shifted, that storms now raged less fiercely. Others said they saw illusions of a shining goddess dancing among the planet's spires, accompanied by a wayward pilot who had dared to stand against fate. In time, new responsibilities beckoned. Liora wished to return to Velyria one day, not as a vessel, but as a liberator who could teach her people that they were no longer bound by the old cycle. Jake, for his part, found himself inexorably drawn toward that same purpose. Though he had longed for nothing but escape when he first crashed, his heart now yearned to see the planet thrive without the shadow of sacrifice. Together, they agreed. One day, they would go back. For now, they soared through the galaxy, forging alliances where they could, staying out of the Council's reach, and learning to harness the cosmic energy that bound them. Their bond, once forced and chaotic, now blossomed into a partnership built on respect and an unspoken warmth that neither had ever known before. Wherever they went, the memory of that final blaze of light in the docking bay lingered, a reminder that destiny could be rewritten with courage and unity. Though countless dangers still lurked among the stars, Jake Vance and Liora ventured onward, hand in hand, forging a future that was truly their own. And if the cosmic essence of Anaris shone a little brighter in their presence, well, perhaps that was a sign that even ancient powers could learn to hope. They found peace, even in the midst of uncertainty, and in their shared laughter under alien suns, they discovered a happiness that no High Council decree could ever take away.